Welcome to another broadcast of the Lorain County Commissioners' General Meeting. Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Thursday mornings at 9:30 at the Lorain County Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings, and as always, you are invited to attend.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the March 7th meeting of the Lorain County Board of Commissioners. I have a thought for the day. It's don't be afraid of opposition. Remember, a kite rises against the wind, not with it. Teresa?
Number 1, resolutions, job and family services bills.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Investments.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Appropriations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
There are no advances, no repayments, requisitions.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Travel expenses.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Bills.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Under the Commissioners, authorize various personnel actions as indicated on the summary for employees within jurisdiction of Lorain County Commissioners.
Commissioners, I need an executive session at the conclusion of our regular board business today. We have a number of hires we were discussing at Job and Family Services last week that we didn't complete, and I'd like to continue to go over those candidates for hire, which you set later this morning. Thank you.
We couldn't hear the reason there.
Speak up, sir.
New hires.
Approve and waive the reading of the same for Lorain County Board of Commissioners meeting minutes for December 30th, 2005, and February 9th, 16th, and 23rd, 2006.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Award various contracts for the addition and alterations in Lorain County Records Center in a total amount of $850,844 to be paid from the capital improvements account. 6 bids were opened on February 14th, and based upon the review of all bids, proposals, and subsequent responsible bidder and local participation information, the low bidder as general contract has been deemed non-responsive due to incomplete and inaccurate information, so the following bids will be considered the lowest and best received. For general trade, Schreimer Construction North Olmsted in the amount of $683,090, which includes alternates. Plumbing to Suburban Process Piping, Vermillion, $54,754. The electrical to Higgins Electric Company, Elyria, in the amount of $113,000, which includes alternates. And issue notice to proceed letter effective honor before March 13th and complete honor before September 25th, 2006. And authorize county administrator to notify the county auditor to release retainage at completion of said project.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Award a contract to Don Nemeth Construction, Inc., Lorain, in the amount of $14,750 for foundation repair to J. and Barbara Gallagher, LaGrange, in the form of a grant. $7,500 will be paid from the USDA Rural Development, and $7,250 will be paid from CHIP's CDBG FY05 Emergency Home Repair Activity Account.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Instruct the clerk to advertise notice for the first public hearing for the FY06 CDBG program to be held on Thursday, March 30th at 10 a.m. Notice will be published in the Morning Journal on March 19th and 16th.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Award contract to James Poff and Sons Excavating, West Salem, in the amount of $5,640 for a sanitary sewer connection for William and Loretta Pyle at 33133 Swartz Road, Avon, in the form of a grant. There was only one quote received and will be paid from account FY04 Emergency Home Repair Activity.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Amend Resolution 0663 adopted January 26, 2006, awarding contract to Class Construction, Inc., Avon Lake, in the amount of $800 to provide plumbing as a grant to Kathy J. Becker Nelson, Carlisle Township, to be paid from CDBG FY05 Emergency Home Repair Activity Account. Class Construction withdrew their bid, therefore it was rebidded. Award contract to Geisel Heating, Inc. in the amount of $1,375, which includes a 10% contingency for any unforeseen change orders.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Under Job and Family Services, this one's going to be amended a little bit, that they are not, at this point, going to go out for school clothes, school supplies and clothing related. They were under the assumption that they had to pay for it by June 1st. They have a whole year to expend that. So they're going to actually instruct the clerk to advertise requests for proposals for various programs for Lorain County Department of Job and Family Services for prepaid merchandise cards for the fuel cards, and then summer camps. Notice will be published in the Chronicle Telegram on March 20th and 27th, and to be open at 2 p.m. on April 3rd in the public hearing room.
So moved.
I'll second. This is for fuel
Discussion.
cards and summer camps only.
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
And you want me to just skip this one until they
Yeah, let's
here, or-
hold this till the engineer gets here.
Under Children's Services, authorize various additions and deletions of personnel in Lorraine County Children's Services to utilize their Shell Oil gas card not to exceed $200 and the agency's MasterCard not to exceed $2,500 for the year 2006.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Under Domestic Relations, approve and enter an amendment with Compass Group USA, Inc. by and through its Canteen Correctional Services Division for the Juvenile Detention Center. Amendment is reflecting an increase of 13 cents per meal.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Under the Sheriff, authorize Lorain County Sheriff to participate in the FY06 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program and apply to the Bureau of Justice Assistance for the purchase of 8 bullet-resistant vests. This program allows states and units of local government to receive up to 50% of the cost. Per the labor agreement with the Deputies Union, bullet-resistant vests are to be purchased for all members of the bargaining unit whose duties necessitate the use of such vests. Authorize the Sheriff to submit this application via the Internet no later than April 18th, 2006.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Mr. Cortez, County Administrator?
I have no reports this morning. Thank you.
Mr. Ennis, Assistant County Prosecutor?
I have one matter regarding litigation that I need to discuss with the commissioners, and I need to update you on the status of another matter.
Commissioners report?
The
No
engineers
report
are
this
here.
week.
I have one item. I forgot to give this to us at the last Commissioners meeting. This is award for Main Street Amherst that was presented at their 3rd annual Heart of the City Dinner Dance. It's presented to Lorain County Commissioners Betty Blair, Ted Kalo, and Lori Kokoski in recognition of your outstanding support of Main Street Amherst as a partner for success and your continued efforts in the revitalization and promotion of Amherst's great historic downtown. Presented February 25th, 2006.
Very nice.
Thank you.
So, Teresa, we need another spot.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have no report board correspondence.
I move the reading be waived.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
And then we'll go up to the engineers since they are here. And then we'll do
Okay.
public comment afterwards.
Pardon me?
Then we'll do public comment
Yes.
afterwards.
Let's do that.
Do you want to read it?
Proceed with the construction of sanitary sewer improvement number 114 within Lorain County General Sewer District for Broadway Taylor, Amherst Township.
Okay, well, we're not going to make a motion at this point. We had a public hearing on this matter back in, I think it was December. The engineers are here now to give us some insight on this, and many of the property owners are here. I did receive just this morning a copy from Phillips and Company, the attorney representing the residents, and I have a question for our legal counsel. In the second paragraph, it says the cost of the assessments are excessive and confiscatory, I can't say that word, upon the property owners when compared to the value of their properties and are unlawful. Isn't there a percentage like 33% that you can't assess more than the value of a property? Jerry?
Well, I'd have to check. I'm not aware of a hard and fast rule that what the limits are, but we can.
I believe there's a 33%
Maybe our sanitary
evaluation.
engineer can answer that.
Mr. Carney, can you come up to the microphone, maybe answer this question? Did you hear the question?
I'd have to defer that to legal counsel. If there's a law that dictates that the value of a property cannot be increased more than a third, I cannot quote that code at this point, but I'm more than happy to research and determine that to you. But no, I couldn't answer that question at this point.
Okay. Mr. Bishop, is there anything that you'd like to discuss on this matter?
No, I agree with Mr. Carney completely. I'm not aware of anything like that in the past. I have to refer that to legal.
Jerry, when I was on council in the city, I like 99.9% sure that there is a figure of 33%, unless it's changed since that time. And I don't know if any of these properties would fall under that criteria.
I guess we've just never been faced with that issue before, where that kind of a, so.
Okay.
Again, I don't have any knowledge of that kind of a limitation, Commissioner, but I will research it and let you know.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions that were brought up at the public hearing was a couple of streets that got done right around the Broadway-Taylor area, and that was Henry and Tenney, I believe. And I contacted the mayor of the city of Amherst to ask him if there was any grant funding provided for those sewers, and according to the mayor, it was all funded through their sanitary sewer department. There was no federal funds or any kind of funding, so I just wanted to let you guys be aware of that. And I also asked him if you guys decided to annex into the city of Amherst, if he would take you, and he said no, not until you had sewers. So, is there any commissioners that have any comments that they would like to make?
I have a couple. Pursuant to the letter which the property owners received from Teresa Upton, our clerk, in the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, the whole reason why we're proceeding on this matter, as far as I'm concerned, says, on February 15th, the director of the Ohio EPA issued a notice of violation to the board for not complying with certain deadlines in the Ohio EPA director's order, and referred the notice of violation to the Ohio EPA enforcement section for consideration of legal enforcement, including the possibility of penalties and fines. And then I would like to make reference to Mr. Phillips' letter, second paragraph. He makes the statement that there has been a lack of a good faith effort to obtain grants and funding for the project. I take exception to that statement. He further states the boundaries do not include all of the properties benefited from the project, and there are properties which will be benefited but are not being assessed, including without limitation the properties on Hall Court. I think there are some questions raised in the statements that I just made that deserve an answer, and I'm not sure where we will get an answer from.
Hall Court is in the city of Amherst. It's not in the township. And they are also, according to Mayor Taylor, under EPA mandate to put sewers in too, but they're waiting for this project to be completed before they can do their project.
I would suggest that we let Mr. Bishop respond to your question on Hall Court. Mr. Bishop?
Yes, Commissioners, our project is the lead project to get the trunk sewer in the ground and get it over to a location where the city can tap into it. Actually, both projects could go on at the same time, just so that they all start up at the same time. They're both under findings and orders.
Well, that leads to my question then, Wayne. Is there a benefit to the Hall Court property from this project?
The benefit is just one outlet for them to outlet into our sewer, and then our benefit is the outlet into their sewer on 58. So through the negotiated agreement that we have with them, that was in consideration. Now, the assessment that you see, ma'am, is only for the sewer constructed on the township parcels and the outlet going from 58 over to Broadway.
So you're suggesting that there's mutual benefit?
There's mutual benefit, but the benefit has been proportionally distributed properly to the parcels.
Okay.
So Amherst is giving and Amherst Township on our sewer line is giving, correct, Wayne?
Could you say that again, sir?
They're taking ours and we're taking theirs. That's the
Exactly.
mutual
It's a
benefit.
joint
Okay.
project.
Right.
We're going together on it. We're sharing the cost, what we feel is fair through a negotiated agreement.
So there's no upsizing cost being passed on to this project to diminish the cost of their project?
No, Mr. Cortez, the way that works is that we have the minimum size sewers that's required to meet the slope of the land to get to the outlet. We don't have enough houses in either district to justify oversizing of a sewer.
Okay.
The letter further states that the property owners are being unlawfully assessed for the excess cost and expenses of the main trunk line.
Now, everybody is being assessed equally, the same equation, the same calculation for every parcel.
Thank you, Wayne.
You're welcome.
Ted, you have anything? Should I open it up to?
You're free to do so, Commissioner, if you desire. It's not a public hearing, no. This is just a decision, but how you proceed, as long as everybody's aware that it's not a public hearing to take testimony or anything like that. That's all closed, and how you proceed from here is strictly the board's prerogative.
Well, I see Neil Lynch from Amherst Township is here, and I'm sure, I don't want to hear from all the residents. I know I've heard from many, we've heard from you at the last public hearing, but Neil, if you want to come up to the microphone, because I'm sure you'd like to represent your constituents. Oh, is he?
I appreciate that, but I know that the legal representative for the resident would like to speak first.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Phillips.
Good morning. My name is
Morning,
Gerald
Gerald.
W. Phillips. I'm an attorney here on behalf of the Broadway and Taylor Street residents. I'm from Avon Lake, Ohio, where my practice is. I believe besides myself, only Neil Lynch and maybe one other person has signed up to speak, so I don't anticipate a whole slew of individuals coming forward. First thing I'd like to indicate is to point out the financial burden that this proposed project is going to have on those residents. Besides the assessments, which are before this board, they're going to have additional costs to deal with the laterals bringing in from the tie-in into their house, and those could be in the neighborhood of $3,000 or $5,000. In addition, they're going to be forced to close the septic systems, and there's going to be additional costs in those, and those could be $1,000 to $2,000. So we're looking at a situation where these property owners, and they're small lots, they're 40 by 127, are going to have an astronomical burden on them, financial burden. And Neil will get into some of the more details as far as the economic background to indicate that this really is a catastrophic effect on these property owners. In light of this financial burden, I mean, the residents really didn't have any choice but pursuant to law to file today on their behalf their notice of intent to appeal the decision of this board if it goes forward to proceed with it and approve the project and the assessments in order to protect themselves from this catastrophic financial burden. I want to address some of the items that came up in connection with the letter as far as issues. Commissioner Kukowski, you are correct. There is a provision that says 1/3. Whether it applies in this particular case or not, it may not. But there is a provision that limits the overall assessments to 1/3 of the value of the property. The other issue is there is law that says that when you put a trunk line, that the property owners, are only liable for the costs of a normal-sized sewer for their property. So I believe that the law cannot force them to pay the excess cost for a 10-inch trunk line, especially in light of the fact that that trunk line is absolutely positively necessary in is an express condition for Hall Street in order to get sewers. And as far as the law on assessments, you can't assess any property owner, whether it's for sewers, stormwater, sidewalks, any more than the special benefit that these property owners will receive. And the special benefit is measured by the increase in property values. If you look at these assessments, their property values is nowhere going to go up close to the amount of the assessment. And that's the reason why they appeal. I mean, we'll test that in court to the extent that you can't assess somebody more than the benefit they receive. The costs, when you look at the financial burden and the values of the properties, are excessive. Lack of good faith effort. I got an agreement that this county commissioner signed with the city of Amherst that expressly conditions this improvement project. It's dependent upon each of the parties, including the county, obtaining certain grants and fundings. And in the event that the funding isn't obtained, then this agreement, can be terminated. It doesn't exist. One of the concerns these residents have is, what efforts have been made to reduce the costs in connection with that. I mean, this is an agreement concerning that. The boundaries, this agreement has a different boundary rather than Taylor Street and Broadway. It includes Henry and Hall Street Court as far as the agreement between the county commissioners and the city of Amherst. That's your project area. You get an assessment that doesn't include the scope of the agreement. There's discrepancies between the EPA area and what the assessment area is. There's properties north of, I believe, Tenney Street that aren't included in any EPA order. And there's properties in the EPA order that aren't part of this assessment district. A lot of questions that remain. Again, I was here probably a year or two ago in connection with the sewers for the Amherst Township Airport in East River Road. And there was a similar agreement that was negotiated, between the county and the city, in that case, Elyria, that, the township wasn't involved in, and again, the township wasn't involved in. And the residents weren't represented. There's provisions in there that really are unconscionable and not looking out for the interests of these residents. And I suggest, that whenever you have a sewer project like that, before any agreement, you send out notices to the trustees and the residents so they can come sooner and tell you what their concerns are, okay? Because otherwise, you're going to have a packed room of people all the time, like we had a few years ago, and you end up in a lot of litigation. My purpose here isn't to threaten litigation and to intimidate anybody, but they have to follow the law and do certain things to protect their rights, and that's what they did. They filed a notice of intent to appeal because they need to do that just to preserve their rights. I'm hopeful that some kind of solution or resolution in this matter can be done that eases the financial burden. And I know Neil Lynch is going to get into that a little more, so I'm not going to belabor too much on that. But I do want to talk about some of the issues that he's going to talk about in order to ease the burden. And if these were part of a condition or part of it, they could probably help with the resolution of it, make it more bearable to the residents, and avoid expensive, protracted litigation. One of the issues that came up was in connection with this project. There's some roadway and pavement work, and Neil Lynch has already brought this idea about coordinating that so that they could get issued, I believe, 2 money and use some of that money to cover some of the costs, and that will help reduce some of the burden on the residents. So that clearly is something that I would suggest that be done in order to ease the burden. 2, I believe he's indicated that there's lateral costs for 8, 9, 10 properties that they have no homes on it and don't need it, and those costs need to be eliminated in order to ease the financial burden. There's been some discussions concerning the term of the assessments in the past. 20 years initially, 30 years, 40 years. So a 40-year assessment period, which I believe bond counsel indicated could, because of the type of project and the life of sewers, meets the bonding requirements. So 40 years would definitely assist in alleviating some of the burden. Not all the burdens totally is going to go away, but every little bit helps for the residents. 4th issue deals with this outfall or the trunk line. I mean, the excess size and cost. There's been numbers thrown around from as low as $297,000 to $400,000 for the cost of that. That needs to be equitably shared. These people shouldn't have to pay 100% of that cost when, but for that trunk line, Hall Court would have never been assessed. Would never be able to deal with their EPA problem. It's clearly, even in your agreement, says that it's necessary and essential for Hall Court and Henry to deal with it, and Hall Court can't be serviced without the trunk line. To force these people to pay 100% of that is just not right. Additionally, the residents believe that the county should share to some extent in funding in this project, and I think Neil has a proposal concerning cost sharing on this as far as the county portion. Funding. I mean, obviously, any kind of funding, any kind of grant, any kind of low-income assistance. I know there's programs. I dealt with Mr. Twining, as far as low income, as far as some of the costs. But whatever could be done to alleviate the burden would definitely help. As part of the negotiation, these people are also going to have to tap into Amherst, and they're going to be subject to the normal charges. And what's really unconscionable is they're going to be paying 50% more than the tap-in fees for the for the residents of Amherst, and 50% surcharge in their rates. I mean, who in good faith would have negotiated a deal on behalf of residents to make them pay more? It should have been equal. And that's part of the unconscionability of this situation. Clearly, Amherst residents are far better than the residents in the township on this, both from an assessment, both from tap-in fees, surcharges, and everything. And it was this body that negotiated, without the residents and the trustees, that deal. I mean, this agreement, either get the money from Amherst or the county really should, that should be part of the cost of the contribution. It's unfair to burden these residents. A lot of them are elderly. These are not big mansions. Those properties aren't large, expensive homes. They're very small, meager homes. A $16,000 assessment, which is the average, plus if you throw in $4,000 for clothes. I mean, you're looking at $20,000, $30,000, which is clearly exorbitant and large compared to the area. So we'd like to resolve it. We'd like to get some kind of solution and try to minimize the financial burden on them through some of those alternatives. I know Neil Lynch has worked with the residents quite extensively on this, and he probably will elaborate a little more. We'd like to resolve it. And we know, and the residents know, that it's not going to go away, and they're going to have to pay something. But they don't want to pay something that's going to bankrupt them, financially force them to sell the properties and move, and just be an astronomical, unconscionable burden. And so we're willing to listen, talk, and try to work out some situation where we put some conditions so that this project can go forward, but yet at the same time don't devastate the property owners. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I just make a comment? We were given a list of the property owners. There's 91 on this list. The total assessed cost, I'll take that back. The total tentative assessment is $913,708. Divided by 91 is an average of $10,040, which is a tidy sum, I admit, but the average is $10,000. There are 20 assessments on this list that are over $10,000. Most of them are under $10,000.
I'd like to respond to Mr. Phillips a couple of things. He brought up the tie-ins and the collapsing of the systems. There is CDBG money that they can apply for that, depending on, you have to be income eligible for that. The roads, Mr. Lynch and I spoke about that yesterday, and that might be something that we could work out. The 20-year rather than 40-year, we are looking at that to make, we want to make this as easy as possible on the residents. If it wasn't for the EPA mandating these sewers, we wouldn't probably even be here today. So, Mr. Lynch, if you want to come up to the mic.
All right, thank you. I'm Neil Lynch. I'm a trustee in Amherst Township. I live at 8132 Oberlin Road. And good morning, Commissioners. You have in front of you 5 exhibits that I had placed there before you came in, dealing with the Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project 114 in the Broadway and Taylor area of Amherst Township. I want to assure you that I'm not here to protest the need of these sanitary sewers in this area. I believe there's ample evidence to justify the need for a central wastewater collection system in this area to protect the health of our residents and to protect the shared environment. I'm not here to review the history of the knowledge regarding the wastewater treatment problems in this area. As Lorain County Sanitary Engineer, Lorain County Health Department, and the Ohio EPA possess reams of paper that document the history. But there is a brief summary that's included in your packet there as Exhibit A. I'm not here to lay blame on any individuals or any entities for any breakdowns in communication or the tremendous cost burden facing the residents on the Broadway Avenue and Taylor Street area. I'm here as their elected representative. As are you too, Commissioners. We all, both of us, represent these residents. I also want to point out that my fellow trustees, Mr. David Urick and Mr. Dennis Abraham, are in attendance at this meeting and are very supportive in this project, or what they can, but at the same time wanting to reduce the cost burden to our residents to get this done. If you'll bear with me, I would like to cover some of the financials to ensure that we're both on the same page. Now, I'd like to discuss alternatives that we might consider in reducing the cost burden to our residents. Some of these Mr. Phillips has already covered, and I'll try and go over those a bit more quickly. You have as Exhibit B a spreadsheet that lists the various parcels, homeowners, property market values from Lorain County Auditor's database, and the preliminary sanitary sewer assessments that the property owners have received. As you can see, for any individual homeowner in the Amherst Township the tentative sanitary assessment ranges from $9,560.50 to $78,772.30. Although there's a significant variability, the vast majority of the homeowners can expect an assessment in the range of 15 to 30% of the market value of their homes and properties. And whereas Commissioner Blair has pointed out that it appears 91 items, those are more the parcels. Realize most of those parcels are 40 foot wide in their frontage and 127 feet deep. But some of these property owners may have two parcels or portions of a parcel, so that's where the variability from homeowner to homeowner, if you really look at what that area is, you may have two parcels but are only capable of having one home. You may have your garage or some other outbuilding that's on that second parcel, which means you're paying close to double that, and that's where an individual resident, and they're all listed there, may be paying $15,000 to $20,000 in their assessment. And I did try to address that where those combined parcels are by shading those particular areas, so you can see there's a single home but multiple parcels. This assessment burden, though, gets compounded when you consider that the household incomes of these homeowners. A survey was conducted by Lorain County Community Development Department and Lorain County Engineers Sanitary Division in June of 2002, and it indicated that 34 of the 48 households that were contacted, or 71%, qualify in the low to moderate income. A copy of that survey summary is labeled as Exhibit C. It's difficult enough when you experience a cost burden equivalent to 15 to 30% of your property value, and it may be devastating if you do not have the income to absorb this cost burden. The financial burden gets worse, and Mr. Phillips alluded to this earlier. The homeowners can expect connection costs in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $4,000. I realize that many may qualify for CDBG funding, and they may get the help in connecting their homes, and they may get help in abandoning their current on-lot system. But one thing we've learned when we talk about grant funding and public monies, there's no guarantee. That's a big risk for people to take. There's potential here of risking their homes. Exhibit D is a spreadsheet that lists the project cost estimate for the sanitary improvement number 114. The estimated costs are provided by K. McCartney and Associates, currently amounting to $913,708. This amounts to an average of approximately $16,000 per homeowner. Now, there is some conflict in here. The resolution that the commissioners originally passed for this project indicates 58 homeowners. We weren't able to count that many homes in the project area, but it's close. So give or take somewhere in the neighborhood of 58 or 54 to 58 homes. Now, with these figures in mind, I want to return back to the goal that I stated earlier. The goal is to determine what we can do to significantly reduce this tremendous cost burden faced by our residents and our electors, mine and yours. By significant, if we can get it down the range of 50%, that will bring it down to something that's a little bit more reasonable. Realize when we say 50%, a homeowner that has a 40-foot by 127-foot lot would still be assessed $4,750, or approximately $120 per linear foot. Exhibit E lists several different options that can reduce the resident's cost burden and some considerations to keep in mind when you evaluate these options. Some of these alternatives have been discussed with various county officials since the December 5th, 2005 public hearing regarding this project. But it's important that we all understand the options and the risk involved. I hope the county commissioners will look favorably on this list of options and perhaps identify additional financial relief alternatives. One thing I'm sure that we're going to hear from different county officials, you may even think this yourself, the county can't afford any of these options. But whenever you think that, think also, how can the residents afford these? How can they afford this cost burden? Because somebody has to pay. At this time, I'd like to go to Exhibit E and actually try and run down these things. The first item is the street and storm sewer reconstruction. That's already been discussed. The township trustees have worked with Mr. Carney, our Lorain County engineer, as to what we might be able to do in coordinating the cost of the streets so that those are not assessed to the residents. And at this point, that looks promising. Those details haven't been completed. Mr. Carney seems supportive on this. If we can get the streets out, that's about 9% of this project cost. The question is, can we also include the storm sewers on that and obtain issue 2 monies that will cover the storm sewers that are necessary to protect that road to ensure proper drainage? That might be a little bit more difficult. The difficulty being the timing and the coordination between the construction of the sanitary project and also the storm sewers. It's not like we can disconnect those storm sewers without reconnecting them right away. But I'm sure that if we put our heads together, the township and Mr. Carney, we may be able to do something a little bit better than just the street. Again, there's no guarantees. But if we can get the storm sewers included, we're now in the neighborhood of 12 to 13% reduction in the total project cost. You heard the mention of the laterals. There are laterals that are currently being assessed to some of the properties down there. At this point, it appears there's 8 additional laterals. The thinking was, when this was put together, was that if those laterals weren't put in now, there was potential if someone thought they could build a home later, they'd be tearing up the road again to get that sanitary over there. So that might make sense to put those laterals in. To do that, though, the township would have to look at rezoning this area. Currently, this area is not zoned to support those lots as buildable lots. And any rezoning that we would do in that area, we would want to make sure that we had some discussions with the city of Amherst, because the city of Amherst surrounds that area, and we certainly don't want to be zoning something that's going to be creating any feuds between our adjoining neighbors. So we can't promise what would be done. It appears that there would be support in the township for some rezoning to allow those 8 laterals to be put in, which would be a help. But I don't want anybody to think some property owner is going to get rich because now they've got an additional lateral and potential of building on that lot. To put it in perspective, we're talking about a lot that's 40 foot wide and 127 feet deep. That's 0.117 acres. If you take what's currently assessed for that vacant lot inclusive of that lateral, that's $8,460.25. If you equate that on a cost per acre to think I'm going to make this tremendous amount of money, you would have to be able to sell land at $72,545 an acre to break even. I don't know how many of you have driven down in that area, but I'm certain that no one's going to sell a vacant lot at a cost of almost $73,000 an acre. And that's just having a lateral there. That's all you've got. We've talked about the assessment term, and I've had discussions with County Administrator Jim Cordez, and at this point, this still looks promising. That's something we hope the county can do. I don't know what the ultimate reduction would be in terms of the semi-annual or annual assessments of the residents, and that's something that we would need to find out. But I do appreciate the additional work and consideration that Mr. Cordez and the commissioners would give to extending this. This doesn't reduce the cost of the residents. They'd actually be paying more in finance costs, but at least may put it in a situation where they're paying this off in smaller bites so there's not the threat of losing their home. The 4th item is the outfall. Fortunately, Mr. Carney was able to obtain a no-interest loan from OPWC to help with the outfall in an amount of $148,768. And that is a help because it saves a finance savings, but ultimately the residents will still be paying that back, so it's not a gift. During a March 2nd, 2006 conversation with Mr. Carney, he estimated the outfall cost to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $297,000. You've heard another figure thrown around, close to $400,000. I know in preliminary minutes going back in 2002, those were the estimates from Kay McCartney, so we know we're somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000. This outfall, I realize that Mr. Bishop's indicated the horse trading that may have gone on, and that's fine. I can understand what may have existed at that time, but there is no doubt that this outfall does benefit the Hall Court property owners in the city of Amherst, in addition to the vacant property on the west side of State Route 58, which is also the city of Amherst, which could make that property prime property. But the appearance is that the residents in Amherst Township are paying the vast majority of the burden that's really going to be benefiting some additional properties. So it's just something to be considerate of here and what alternatives we may have in terms of cost sharing for that outfall. Number 5 is the one that I'm sure is going to make the eyes open, and this is the request of a 33% cost sharing from the county. I don't care how that comes up. I'm sure that there's a lot of creative people to determine where those funds can be obtained from. The Ohio EPA did issue administrative orders to construct sanitary sewers in this area in September of 2003. Commissioner Blair alluded to the final findings and orders. I believe it was indicated on February 15th, but I'm holding a notice dated February 10th, received by the county on February 24th, regarding the violation that the county is currently under for not complying with those orders. This project will also facilitate service in the area of the city of Amherst, which also must comply with these EPA orders. But they can't comply until we comply. So you see the Mexican standoff. I hope that didn't offend anybody. Project funding from the commissioners will avoid project delays that may be caused by the residents, alleviate some of the residential financial burden, and show true compassion for the residents in an area of low to moderate income. A 33% share is equivalent to the cost of the 10-inch diameter outfall. Works out real nice when you run the numbers. Adding that up with the previous, we're now, if this were considered, between 43 to 45% of this project cost. I do want to touch on that notice of violation from the Ohio EPA. This is somewhat disappointing and may have been a strategic mistake on the township's part. And it's difficult to admit your mistakes, but again, this was perhaps a false belief that working in cooperation and communication that we could work out something better. This notice of violation was authored by Mr. Chuck Allen, the environmental engineer of the Division of Surface Water for the Ohio EPA. And I love the paragraph that states, a meeting was held with Lorain County engineer and Amherst Township residents on December 20th of 2005 to discuss the project. According to those in attendance, the start date was still unavailable as there were several issues which need to be addressed regarding sanitary sewer laterals to homes and possible financial assistance from the state. As of the end of 2005, initiation of sewer construction had not commenced. I don't know if the chickens invited the fox in or what happened here. I don't know if this notice of violation would have been issued without inviting Mr. Allen in to discuss this, or if this would have been something sitting below the reams of paper that they seem to push around over there. But the last paragraph says, please be advised that the county is currently in violation of the findings and orders as issued by the director of the Ohio EPA. By copy of this correspondence, the enforcement section of the Ohio EPA is being informed of these misstates and their legal enforcement consideration is being requested. I want to thank Mr. Allen for all the help and support he was and the concern and compassion he had for these residents. I don't know how far this will go, but I know in our discussion with Mr. Allen, it was obvious to me that he was not a decision maker in this. He consistently said, you need to talk with Columbus. I'm hoping that that's something we can still do here jointly. And you'll see that coming up. Because what we were asking Mr. Allen for was time relief. We didn't ask the EPA to shell out any money. We didn't ask them to give us their firstborn. We didn't ask them to give us their right arm. We asked for time. Time so that the county and the township and the city of Amherst could explore additional funding sources to make this project a reality. But that's something we may have to go further on, because I think it is important that we try and get the appropriate funding put together to support this project. Number 6 is the City of Amherst residential assessments. Sanitary sewers were provided to neighboring residents in the City of Amherst at very little direct cost to the city residents. Now, that's just a consideration, because I want the commissioners to recognize the frustration that's among the neighbors, because all these neighbors talk, they all socialize. And if you're finding that your neighbor paid very little and you're being asked to pay $10,000 to $78,000, that's hard medicine to swallow. So it just appears that there may be a strong disparity there, and so we've got to try and do something here to equalize this. Number 7 is grant funding opportunities. If the Ohio EPA will provide the county with some time relief on the final findings and orders. I certainly hope someone here has some good contacts and relations there with the EPA. Perhaps the county and the City of Amherst could explore grant opportunities for this project. Clause 1.03 of the agreement between the City of Amherst and Lorain County is authorized by Lorain County Resolution Number 2002-32, specifically states that funding for the construction of this project is dependent upon each of the parties, obtaining Ohio Public Works Commission grants and/or community development block grants. Where are the grant funds for the construction in Amherst Township? We don't see them. Item 8 was alluded to earlier about the tap-in fees and the 50% surcharge on the waste treatment. And this is something that the City of Amherst has in by ordinance. And I'm not contesting that. The fact that it'll be a $600 tap-in for residents in the Amherst Township, $400 in the city. There is a $200 differential. But I would certainly hope that, recognizing that those tap-in fees and those surcharges are intended for capital improvement and construction, and that's what this project is. It's possible that there may be an opportunity for some negotiation with the administration, the City of Amherst, to recognize where there are mutual benefits to both the city, the township, and the county to get this project done. And perhaps what we can do is have some of that funding, and perhaps even the ongoing 50% surcharge, directed to supporting the cost of this construction. Now, that's something that I would certainly agree to participate in if my participation was welcome, as would the other trustees. I don't know how far we'd get, but I think that there is the potential here for mutual benefit in all three parties. Item 9, just a lot of question marks. This list wasn't intended to be all-inclusive. There's a lot of intelligent people sitting in this room. I'm sure you can come up with other creative ways to bring this cost down for our residents, to put it within the realm of reason. We're willing to listen to all alternatives. Right now, the one alternative facing our residents is way too high. You really are talking about a situation where residents will have difficulty keeping their homes. And I can't imagine any public official wanting to put any resident that they represent in that position. And thank you, Commissioners. I would like to submit a copy of this presentation to the clerk so that it will be entered into the record. And I'm open to any comments and any questions that you may have.
Have any questions, Commissioners? Mr. Bishop, if you could come up, please.
Thank you, Neil.
If we were to have Ohio Public Works do the roads and take that out of the assessment, and with the 40-year rather than the 20-year, where does it put the assessments at for these people? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, going 40 years, obviously, you'd cut the principal in half. Then you'd have to look at something in the neighborhood of 5 to 5.5% interest per year if you wanted to finance that. If you looked at the taking the roads out, I know we've looked at a figure somewhere around $70,000, which is roughly $1,000 per property or more, and that's something we're definitely going to do.
So Ted's a human calculator. What does that come to, Ted, per household?
$91,000, 91 lots. That would include the lots too,
Divided
correct?
by how many people? 50?
91, they save $1,000 each.
Well, it comes up to about 840,000. We'll bring it down. But I understood that the road had been decided. I spoke with Mr. Lynch. You still here, Neil? I thought that was already decided, that the road was going to be handled differently before the meeting.
Correct, Jim. What we'd like to do is work with Ken Carney on the road. The question is if we can get the storm sewers as part of that also.
Can we address that now? I mean, I thought the road was done, and our resolution calls for a 40-year bond. We pretty much already have agreed to that, and we worked that out.
But that's not reflective in what their assessments are.
It really doesn't change the assessments. It just changes the...
How much it's going to cost to pay back.
Right,
That's what
each year.
they're-
This
I'm
is
sure-
the maximum based on the assessments. The most going to be spent. Any deals we cut after that would then lower whatever their assessments turn out to be, correct?
Correct. And coming into the meeting, we did the 40-year. My understanding, the road had been agreed to. I'm uncertain of how you can deal with the storm sewer. Do you?
Mr. Cortez, the storm sewer is a little hard to understand. We've got what we call lateral crossings, where the sewers cross from the main over to the house, and we have the mass majority of those storm sewer replacements are little 8 and 10-foot sections where the pipe goes through that storm sewer. We have to replace those. There's nothing we can do about that. We do have probably 200 feet of mainline storm sewer. You know, that's only $30,000, that's only $25,000, $30,000 worth of storm sewer. If we ditch that, we'd have to close in the drives. So we'd probably be lucky if we could get, you know, 12,000 out of that.
Okay, so it's because I had wrote here that it looked like there was an additional 3 or 4%. So in order to accomplish that, we'd have to spend money to accomplish it. So
Yeah,
that
you would
reduce
spend money, sir.
the savings down. Can I ask? I'd like to ask about these 8 laterals. If the zoning is such, couldn't an agreement be entered into with the township not to change that zoning, so we didn't have to put those 8 laterals in?
Well, that's an excellent question. What we've looked at in the past and what we've thrown around the table is that we've broken these assessments down into mainline assessment and lateral assessments, so we could take a lateral off to a vacant lot anytime we want and reduce that assessment. It's right in the calculation. And that amount in the calculation is what it costs to install that lateral. Now, we could do that. The only thing that would be required is a release from the property owner allowing us to do that. And in the future, if they want to develop and connect or develop that lot, or whoever they sell it to would want to develop, they would have to pay to cross the road to tie in.
Let me mature my question more, because I understood the concern was that eventually a new road or a new topping on the road is going to be put in, and there was some desire not to chop up that road after that was done because the laterals weren't in place. Let me re-ask my question. I heard Mr. Lynch speak to the fact that the zoning was such that those were unbuildable lots right now because they weren't zoned to allow that to be done. In order to meet the goal of the county engineer not wanting to chew up the road after it's been redone, could not an agreement be entered into that says that those lots will not receive sewer service and they will not be buildable lots, and that zoning won't change?
That's exactly right. You could do that.
Neil, well, we've got you. I mean, is that agreeable to township and the homeowners then to put an agreement together? You'll never build on a lot you own? Can you sell that to the constituents of this area?
Well, you know, Neil, I thought I took pretty copious notes while you were talking. I may have missed it, but I thought you indicated that those lots were not buildable now because the zoning didn't allow for it. Did I misspeak or mishear?
But you can always ask for variances and asking for those things to be done, so how would you write that into your township ordinances? That's what I'm asking.
Right.
Yeah, Jim, you are correct. What I'd stated is the existing zoning currently in that area requires 125-foot frontage lots. These homes that are there now are well before the zoning regulations were put in place. I'm not an attorney. I don't know what it would come down to as far as assuring that someone doesn't try to force the issue to build there. At this point in time, the preference is probably going to be to allow the residents to build on those lots. The difficulty we have is how far we carry that, because as you move from west to east, getting closer to 58, is where we have some open areas that have very few homes right now. and how do we rezone one area without the other that's in a close proximity, in addition to being surrounded by the city of Amherst. So I'm leaning towards this point, leaving the laterals in and rezoning that overall area, which I believe would be ultimately a benefit to the county as a whole. But we don't have anything committed on that at this point. We haven't had any detailed discussions with the city of Amherst on that. But we could go either way.
What about, in order to survive the legal scrutiny, what if the individual property owners entered into an agreement on those properties if they didn't want those additional laterals, and they entered into an agreement understanding that they would not be able to build on those lots?
Well, I haven't spoken to every one of the property owners that would be assessed those additional laterals. I know that one that would prefer to have the additional lateral, and it's kind of one of these things, it's all or nothing. And so we'd have to speak with the individual property owners on that, Jim.
Actually, I don't think it needs to be all or nothing. I guess I'm down to your question mark at the bottom, out of the box thinking. If it was an individual choice, whether you selected it or not selected it, absent a zoning issue.
Okay.
I thought you indicated there was about $8,500 each for those, each
Correct.
additional lateral. So that could reduce, if 7 didn't want them and 1 wanted it. Wayne, you're shaking your head back there, so you got to come and participate in the discussion if you're going to vibrate.
Mr. Cordez, I just want to mention the lateral is $4,059.
Right.
$4,059?
Yeah, not $8,000.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, the difference, Jim, that $8,000 includes the $4,000, for the lateral plus the frontage assessment. So they would get a portion taken off, not the full $8,000.
Okay, so we have the potential for knocking another $35,000 off the project.
Correct.
And
Would that save the entire area, or would it just save that property
we
owner?
just saved that property owner.
So it would be up to them whether or not they wanted to save the money, or if they future wanted to build on that property.
Correct.
So I guess I would ask you, would you be agreeable, would the township be agreeable if it was legal to allowing those property owners to select whether that lateral went in and whether they entered an agreement on that property in the future?
Well, I can't speak to the other two trustees right now. We didn't discuss it this way, but I would be agreeable to that.
Okay, that's
I
fair.
would think, though, that anyone that would say, yes, they want the lateral, we're still going to have to rezone the area.
And I understand that. I'm just thinking that if a property owner personally enters into an agreement, it would survive challenges later on. They made the decision at that point to restrict the growth of that property. And that may be better than somebody else choosing that for them, which probably would be subject to certain challenges later on. And that can save them some additional money. Plus, I'm thinking that what's the likelihood of that building going on any time while the road's going to get old quicker than the building's going to go there. So I don't know we're going to be too concerned about the road 5 or 10 years from now if it's done next year. It may be due to be redone by the time somebody wants to put a lateral across there.
So you're going to just give them an opt-out option?
Well, I think it's another, part of the equation can be, allowing some of those property owners to opt out of those laterals if they're going to restrict the use of their property. I mean, I think that's a personal decision. Hawkins right down the property rights there on that anyway. So we could probably blend that in, Jerry, as an option. What do you think? Yes, no?
It would have to be done with the agreement of the property owners. I don't think the option of the township just rezoning it out and saying you could never build there, I don't think that's going to pass any scrutiny. But if the individual property owners want to sign some kind of agreement, I think somehow that could be worked into it.
I'm also glad that you think that the EPA hoodwinked us all, because we delayed this, all of us delayed this, to work on the very issues you were talking about. And I was a little surprised when commissioners received that EPA letter. I thought we had more time, and I think you thought we had more time to continue to work on this. That's why it was going so slow. So I'm glad you feel the same way. I'm not sure who invited them out there, though. Did we, or did the township, or was it joint?
The township did request a meeting with the EPA.
Okay.
We had done that with the health department and the county engineer.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I thought that they were working with us at that point, giving us some time.
Well, so did I. It's, at this point, I still can't say that they aren't, and that's why I'm hoping there's someone here that knows someone that is a little bit more reasonable in terms of handling this situation. You know, all I know is that Mr. Allen is not the decision maker here.
The other thing that I still have a weak understanding of, and if the board will indulge me, is this outfall issue. I'd like to ask Wayne a couple more questions on this outfall,
Yeah.
just to get clarification.
And I'd like to know how much it costs.
Come on up, Wayne. You know, I've heard 3 different times that people may be paying for some other person's gain, and especially with this outfall issue, increasing the value or decreasing the cost to people downstream, for lack of another term. And I don't want to use the word accurate, but is there any merit to that argument that would cause us concern here?
No, what we got to keep in mind is that we would have to build a sewer with or without the city in order to serve it, and it would be the minimum size that EPA would allow. The object that we're going from 8 to 10 inch was just in order to meet the slope of the land. We didn't have enough slope to put an 8 inch in. The difference in the price is very small. We've got like 1,000 feet of sewer, and the difference between the 2 sewers are like $5 a foot. So we're only talking like $5,000 over a $900,000 project. That would be the difference. The benefit, we got to keep in mind that the benefit was taken care of of the city parcels, was taken care of in the agreement between the county and the city. We could not get that agreement. We received quite a benefit by having an outlet.
Is there a cost for the city of Amherst to tap into our trunk line?
No, there is not, ma'am.
Why?
There's not a cost because our cost to tap into theirs and their cost to tap into ours was a swap.
Was there any discussions about the possibility of keeping it equal? Because there was a difference in the amount that outside the city pays compared to inside the city. Do you think they would possibly waive that and make it cheaper on these residents, since everybody is benefiting from this?
We tried that, but the negotiations with the agreement, we had to go with the existing resolutions, and that it was 50% more outside. Good point, though.
Go ahead.
Wayne, Trustee Neal has referred to a 33% county cost sharing, and he states that 33% share is equivalent to the cost of the 10-inch diameter outfall.
You know, I've never heard that, ma'am. I
Well, what is
believe
the cost of the 10-inch diameter outfall?
the cost of the 10-inch,
Yes.
if I had to guess, see, we've got 10 inches in different locations on the project. If we take from Broadway over to 58 through that area, we're only talking roughly $50,000, $50,600. But if you add up all the 10-inch going between Broadway and Taylor and going down the streets and just to get the houses, get the sewer low enough to serve the basements, then that total amount would throw it up to, if you look at the estimate, you can pick them right off the estimate, 31.5, 45.6, 56, 37, 24, and 76.
And
But
that
that's
equals-
needed.
Yeah.
And that equals?
But those are needed.
But those are needed for the property
Yeah.
owners in front of their property.
Yeah. When we do an oversizing, we have to figure out what would it be if we just served the houses in the sewer district, or in the service area, and then how much capacity are we setting aside for the extension
Additional.
into another entity? And for this here, we don't have any expansion for an entity. We have such a small number of houses in both areas that we're going minimum EPA. We could, if we had enough slope, we could be putting 6-inch sewers in to serve that number of houses. We're just too flat. EPA requires 8-inch minimum. We used a 10 just to gain a couple more feet to get to a couple more basements.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, I just want to point out to a couple provisions in the agreement. Section 2.10 states that the parties acknowledge that the completion of the trunk sewer described in paragraph 2.01, that's the main and 10-inch sewer, must be done in order to connect the other sewer lines described in paragraph 2.02 and through 2.04. 2.02 deals with the county, 2.3, 2.4 deals with the city, the Hall Court, Taylor Street, and it says, said main sewer shall connect to the end of the trunk sewer. 2.4 talks about Hall Court, and Exhibit A, which clearly shows the agreement that Hall Court was in the area, and part of the agreement as far as the assessment area, said lateral shall connect to the main sewer. This agreement clearly, without question, establishes that the Hall Court is going to get a benefit from that main sewer. But for the fact of that main sewer, Hall Court couldn't be done. Therefore, those people getting a free ride is just unconscionable and illegal. Now, if you negotiated that away in this agreement, then don't put the burden on them. You pick up the cost as part of your share. But they do get benefit. And these people shouldn't pay for the fact that Hall Court's going to get a windfall because of that. And this agreement is pretty clear. You know, the completion of the trunk sewer, okay, benefits other sewer lines, not just Broadway, not just Taylor. So for somebody to say that Hall Court's not getting benefit, I just don't buy that. That trunk line, if it wasn't there, they would have to do their own, and they would have to incur the extra cost for that. And therefore, you know, they should contribute to that cost. And these residents shouldn't pay for it. So any kind of equitable resolution of this needs to address that. And I think that's where Neil was coming from in the sense of contribution, you know, from the county or the city as part of the agreement. So I just want to point that out.
Well, that's why I asked the question if the city of Amherst had to pay to tap into our sewer, and Wayne said no because we have to tap into their sewer.
Yeah, and we're tapping in, and the residents are paying 50% more, okay? Residents have to tap in their sewer at an exorbitant cost. You know, why shouldn't we charge them a tap-in fee to tap into the trunk line? Because we're constructing it.
What 50% cost do you, Neil,
Wayne.
Wayne,
Treatment cost.
what is the treatment cost agreement?
What is the what?
Treatment
cost agreement call for?
The city of
Out of
Amherst
city
is charging
budget.
$600 for the Amherst and
charging-
$1,200 for outside of Amherst, I believe.
Yeah, it's 50% more than what a city customer would pay. And what that is the $637 for the township people and $400 for the city.
Well, that's for tap-in.
For
What about the
tap-in.
treatment rate? What's the treatment?
It would be $750 as compared to $5 per 1,000 gallons.
They've got the same agreement. It's 50% more than
Yeah.
what the in-city residents pay.
One thing that you need to understand about this trunk sewer is that we have less than 1,000 feet. We have 800 and some 900 feet of trunk. If you want to call it a trunk, it's just a main sewer from 58 over to our first street. The city also has 350 feet that they have to run between houses to get to their streets. So they do have a substantial cost incurred for them to do it. Now keep in mind the cost that we are assessing the people, with or without the city, it would still cost us that amount of money. We have enough reserve capacity in our sewers that we're building in the township area to serve the city because of the EPA minimum requirement.
I got a
Right.
really ridiculous question.
Yeah.
What if we didn't have an agreement with Amherst? What would the EPA do then?
Well, that's a legal issue. I think when we got the findings and orders that was set up to both the city and the county, that settled that issue, that it had to be done.
Well, let's say it was
Yeah.
out in the middle of anywhere, and there was no Amherst next door. What would the EPA do?
You go to a very expensive on-site treatment system. You either do it with a community leach field or you go with a replacement on-site system. And communities like that have a very, very tough problem.
You mean to tell me that the EPA wouldn't mandate that the health department come out and make those people fix their on-site system, which is
Yeah, I'm
what should have
doing a
been done
project.
15 years ago?
I'm doing a project right now where we're doing a community on-site system where EPA has threatened mandates, and the health department has jumped in and avoided the attack and took the issue at hand, and they're replacing the small lots onto a farmer's field with some bigger septic tanks and bigger tile fields with some peat filters and irrigation and a whole bunch of other things. Very, very expensive.
Okay.
More expensive than sanitary sewers?
Oh, yeah. Gravity sewers is by far the least cost and the most cost-effective over a long period of time.
Thank you, Wayne.
Commissioners? Anything?
I guess. I'll start, I guess. I've received a lot of phone calls from residents. It's a very difficult issue, the sewers, as I go back through my packet and everything that's been sent along to us, along with Mr. Lynch's thing. This goes back to June of 1982, 24 years ago, when the first complaints were made by the township residences. It was brought to the Board of Commissioners in 1988. None of us were here at the time. It's a lot of cost. I mean, it's a hardship on a lot of people. But with the EPA findings, and if the commissioners come up with some type of help to whatever degree, I've never been in favor of general fund money to pay for sewers. But we don't have much of a choice at this point. We worked on a 40-year amortization, but with the affluent runoff and the problems we're having, it has to be done. And Commissioners?
Madam Chair, I started out the meeting by referring to the letter that we sent to the property owners. Irrespective of the date, this says on February 15th, 2006, the director of the EPA issued a notice of violation to the board, this board, for not complying with certain deadlines in the Ohio EPA director's order, and referred the notice of violation to the Ohio EPA enforcement section for consideration of legal enforcement, including the possibility of penalties and fines. I don't want to pay any penalties and fines to the EPA. I'd rather put some money towards this project if possible. I think the request comes from Trustee Lynch in the form of 33% county cost sharing, but he didn't identify what the 33% was equal to. Do you have a figure, Neil?
My mental calculation, but I happen to have a calculator here.
Wasn't that about the runoff costs, Neil? You were talking about the $297,000 approximate in your figures here?
It'd be close to it, Commissioner Kalo. It's
Close.
actually a little bit more than that.
What'd you say?
It's 913,708 total.
Oh, I wasn't looking at that.
Well, I thought with the laterals out and with the road out, that number would drop.
It would drop, Jim, but let me give you the worst case is $304,569.
And the best case?
$304,500, how much?
$304,569.
And the best?
Those laterals were 4,025.
4,059.
4,059. Times 8. That'd be $293, or I'm sorry, $293,745.
Is that what the road out to, Neil?
It's going to make this complicated.
I'm learning from you as an engineer to be detail oriented.
You do it to us.
Okay, let's get the road out too. I'm going to take the road, assuming we can't get the storm sewers coordinated in there. So the road itself is $80,546. Plus the $32,472 for the laterals. So we're going to take $113,018 off the project. So that's 930, let me get that number again. The project is $913,708, subtracting the road and 8 laterals at $113,018, leaves $800,690.
What was it? Would you repeat it again?
A third of that.
Neil, start again with the 800,000.
690.
Okay.
33% of 800,000.
Let's start the cost is $913,000.
We have too many people talking. Please.
Okay, the project cost, $913,708. If we subtract from that the 8 laterals and the roads, the laterals and the roads amount to $113,018. That would leave us with a project cost of $800,690. And a third of that is $266,897.
Thank you.
How much money, Wayne, do we have in there for contingencies? Is that part of the assessment too? Because the contingencies would be on the roads, correct, not the sewers?
No, the contingencies are on the total project, and what that would be is $26,781. One thing to keep in
Is
mind...
that something that we can take off of this cost also?
I would not take more
No?
than half of it off, ma'am, because we're going to need something for something.
At the end of the day, we don't assess for if the money's unspent.
Oh, okay.
Remembering that
Yeah.
these numbers go down for assessments, they just can't go up. So there's also something else that we can do. I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea to routinely do this, but we go into construction notes when we borrow for the project, and then we recapitalize interest. While if the effort was still there to pursue additional low-cost options and/or grants, public works funds, we can stay in notes for a number of years, recognizing that we have to recapitalize the interest, which adds to the project cost. But we could stay in notes for 5 to 7 years.
So they wouldn't see an assessment?
They wouldn't see an assessment for that amount of years, but we recapitalize in the interest on the notes.
Carry 7 years of interest on $800,000.
Well,
recognizing the EPA wants us to move forward, and you still want to look for grant money. I'm not suggesting it as a course of business, but I believe it's fair to put it out there that the assessments could be delayed. That the conclusion of the project doesn't mean that you have to go to assessment. I mean, you can recapitalize the construction notes for a while. It's not a good practice.
It's not a good.
Also accrues.
Well, yes, it's recapitalized back into the total
Well,
cost.
you're just using
Kind of
big
like
words.
refinancing the interest.
Yes,
But
that's
that would
exactly
give
what it is.
the properties a chance the property values to increase over that amount of time too, now that there's sewers there. I like that idea.
Well, I'm just putting, the potentiality to do a little of that while options were sought for additional funding streams. It's a potential. I just wanted to share it with the board. I can tell Mr. Cahill didn't like that at all. So.
I like
In the
it.
short term, it's not a bad idea. It's sort of like having a credit card, don't make the first payment for 12 months, but long term, we're
Eventually.
going to pay a lot more, so the residents who aren't going to be there in 6 or 7 years get the benefit of fleeing if they can sell their house based on the assessments coming up. And the people who just started their plan on spending 20 or 30 years in that home will just pay an increased cost on their sewers. I understand the short-term benefit of that, but I don't know if that's a long-term gain for anyone.
I don't disagree with you.
I mean, that's
for
the
sure.
residents, I mean,
But it makes a financial burden on the people that are there now
today.
a lot easier to swallow.
Well, what it actually does is it takes your 40 years assessments out
To
to
45.
45 or 47, yeah.
years, okay? It's a little bit of gamemanship in how you handle the financing. Again, I'm not suggesting it as a great alternative. It's just a potential way of delaying, because once you make the assessments, there's not going to be any relief to the homeowners. That's going to be done. Up until the point you make those assessments, the options are still in play.
By then, maybe we'll have a regional sewer district, and everybody can opt in to pay?
Whatever your charge is, Commissioner.
Mr. Phillips, did you have something
Yeah, I
else?
had a question for Mr. Cordez based on this last point. What you're suggesting then is the notes to really buy some time to see if there's any additional funding? Is that one of the goals and objectives?
Well, I was putting it out there as something. I think that, I've heard a lot of dialogue about what we didn't do. I think that there's been a lot of due diligence on trying to get money. There's just not a lot of money out there right now for sewer projects. But yes, I think that would give us more opportunity to continue to reduce down the overall cost burden to each individual homeowner, recognizing, though, that we were unsuccessful, that the recapitalization of the interest would actually drive the cost up a little bit.
And is there any significant difference in the interest rate?
Up until about a year or two ago, we were doing much better in notes than we were doing in bonds, but the market has taken a shift, so the difference is not that significant anymore.
But in 6 or 7 years, Jim,
It could be.
do any of us have a crystal ball that says what the interest rates are going to be?
I
I was
reckon
around in the early 80s when it went to 18% all of a
Oh,
sudden.
yeah.
All right, let me give you the downside.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please let everybody hear that,
The-
because they'll make it as a panacea that we're going to make it all fixed.
The
Go ahead.
the downside is that bonds continue to become more costly, and we didn't lock in a rate in a more aggressive time period, and then we end up paying more for the bonds over the 40-year.
Yeah.
It's a roll. And I will say that the cost of gaining financing has been going up over the last 2 or 3 years. Every time the Fed raises the prime, it costs us a little more to borrow, and I think most people understand that.
But the notes can be shorter term. They don't have to be 5 or 6 years.
No, normally what we do is we
They
do
can be
1 year.
90 days, 180 days, years, and you can roll them over, and at the end of 1 year, which would maybe give you enough time to look at the grants, you can just make the decision after a year, not wait 5 or 6 years. I think,
We generally do 1-year construction notes, and then we recapitalize if we need a second or third year.
and could that also be used in the sense of, to buy some time in dealing with the EPA as far as maybe delaying the project a little bit so we can throw in the storm sewers? I think if they realize that there's a concerted effort, they may be willing to,
We can't.
EPA moves very slowly. I mean,
We can't borrow money and then delay the project. We can't take out a construction note and then do no construction, all right? We can recapitalize the construction costs until we feel it's best to penetrate the bond market, but we cannot borrow money to indicate that we're attempting to do a project and then do nothing with the proceeds from the construction notes. That's not a legitimate borrowing purpose.
all
So
right, well,
I guess what I'm saying is, in simple terms, is once you go to a construction note, the project needs to be done.
I understand.
Okay.
But the funds are only available once the construction comes and you start drawing on it.
Please say that again, sir.
I said the construction loan you can have approved, but it only starts drawing on it as you expend the funds.
You have a drawdown period once you borrow the money that you need to draw on. The idea, though, of going to a construction note and then talking to the EPA about delaying the project, those two things, they're mutually disagreeable.
I'm talking about talking to them right away, letting them know that this is what you plan on doing, and that there's clear intent to proceed, but we're trying to minimize the cost, and either they look at their arsenal of funding to see if they can assist, or they, if they don't have the funding, then they at least try to give. I'm not talking about delay. This goes back to 1982. I mean, first of all, I don't think I would have invited the EPA to a meeting with the trustees if I was in that position. Because I know the EPA, they got tons of stuff and things sit there for years. I mean,
Don't
it sat
ask a
there for 82
question
to
unless
85.
you know the answer. That kicked us all off, Mr.
So,
Phillips.
Mr. Allen, it may sit there for another time period. I think as long as it's communicated that the county's going forward, whether it's going to be 6 months a little later or not, I don't know if it makes that huge of a difference if we can get the storm sewers in. I mean, it makes sense to do them later.
Let me bring you into some dialogue that we did have, and we've been telling them that for 10 years, okay? And quite frankly, everybody, the perception that's being left here and lingering out here is that we haven't had these dialogues, and we've had these dialogues. We've had extensive dialogues, and we've gone to the EPA and said, next week, next month, next year. And this has been going on for a decade, and they're going, we don't believe you guys anymore, all right? And they're not going to delay anymore. And I think I don't know that having the meeting that caused them to raise us to the top or not raise us to the top. They have their eye on us, and they've had their eye on us for a number of years, and we have a number of EPA issues going on. We have spoken to people in Columbus. We do have people that work with the EPA in Columbus. We have sent them over there to talk about the Broadway-Taylor issue, and I sincerely doubt, and I'm going to give you my most creditable view here, that we're going to get another delay on the EPA. They're tired of waiting, and they want the project done, and they've ordered us to do that, and we've dragged our feet on it trying to find other alternatives. I don't think that they're going to allow that to continue. I say that with the best credibility I can tell you, sir. I mean, I'm not hopeful that any further delays are going to be acceptable.
And if I can add to that, I serve on the WACA board with Commissioner Blair, and late last year, and it's happened in a couple of NOACA meetings, a gentleman from the Ohio EPA took me off to decide and explain the dire circumstances Lorain County is putting themselves in if they don't go forward with these projects between our package plants and the sewer needs that have been put off for up to 24 years now. They're going to start fining us heavily. We've been talking about maybe if they are going to fine us, we can keep the money in Lorain County, but they don't have to let us, so that money could be going elsewhere to help other communities. And I understand, all the considerations, and Mr. Cortez brought up this new idea about pushing the debt 6 or 7 years down the road. And again, that falls on the residents who are going to be there then at the higher interest cost and adding 7 years of interest to the bottom line. Again, we're having some discussions here on how the county can help participate and help the residents with these costs, but still, sewers have to be paid for. The county can't pay for them. That falls on every resident, be a municipality, a village, or a township. We all know we have to pay for sewers. Most of you residents know this has been coming. Been trying to put it off with the conversations I've had with people. And I don't know if we approve this and then go into negotiations how we help, if we have to decide before we approve the sewers to go. This is my first big major sewer project. I've been here 14 months, so.
I'm not sure if you, Commissioner, could you rephrase your question, please?
What I'm asking is if we are offering to participate to some degree, do we have to do it now before we approve going forward with the sewers, or can we do it afterwards when we sit down with everybody? Mr. Lynch had some ideas. I'm sure Mr. Urich and Mr. Abraham have some ideas, I'm sure.
I have an answer for your question.
Thank you.
Up until the time you make the...
Wait.
Yeah, let's put it on here so it's recorded.
I don't want it on tape.
She wants to.
Hal's got it.
Up until the time that the assessments are actually made, you have the ability to mitigate the cost borne to each property. You cannot increase those costs, but you can certainly decrease those assessments. I believe that's a basic tenet of the requirements. Is that correct, Ms. Dennis?
Yeah, that's basically correct. The only problem with delaying it now is, as Mr. Cortez said, we have to get the construction going and get it done. So if we delay it now,
My understanding
have those
was
problems.
you weren't talking about delaying the project. You were
Right.
talking
No,
about
doing the
costs.
project, but I'm
Well, I
saying...
meant before, if you delayed passing this resolution while we were trying to
No,
negotiate.
can we negotiate after we pass the
Yes.
resolution? But then when you're saying increased costs, that's 7 years that Mr. Cortez has proposed. That would increase the cost.
I didn't propose it.
Yeah, well, you brought it up. Now, we're going to talk about it. I don't want anybody thinking we're doing something here, and then 7 years down the road, these folks get beat up real bad because of interest costs at 13% of some degree. That cost goes up. What is the difference between this? We've got this amortization we worked out that is at, as soon as I grab this other stack of papers, we're looking at about 6% right now. And it goes up. Does that then get passed on to the homeowner, or does the county eat that as an increased cost?
It goes back onto the homeowners, just like the recapitalization of any construction borrowing we do. And if we stay in construction, it stays with the homeowner. I'd also like to add to something that was talked about here that we didn't get a mature conversation on, was that if we get fined by the EPA, that's accessible to this project cost.
I think you ought to repeat that.
I wasn't aware of that. Could we say that again?
Yeah.
It's accessible to the area that needs to have the construction. It's the area that we're being fined for. So we get fined on this project, those costs will be rolled into the cost of this project.
Can be.
Based on how much we begged the EPA not to fine us.
The one, excuse me, Commissioner, the one impact of going forward, and I can't speak for Mr. Phillips or the potential appellants, but I would assume they would then have to go forward with their appeal, file the appeal, which would end up before the court. I would surmise that the court would be willing to allow those proceedings to go at a pace that would allow the parties to negotiate.
But also along with that, though, that would cause the EPA to do the findings and orders.
Well, the EPA can't hold us responsible if it's in common pleas and it is a state.
Litigation
Right.
stays their ability to fine us?
Yeah, because it's out of our hands, okay? And now, they would have to come up with some reason or rationale that said that if we had proceeded on schedule back in December or whatever it was, this wouldn't have occurred. That's not a reasonable argument. It's nonsensical because we're only delayed, but the same arguments, the same positions would have been put forth a few months ago. They're being put forth today. So they would have to wait to the outcome of any litigation proceedings, and then if we didn't move forward after those, if we were authorized to do so, then they would come back at us again at that point. Correct?
Well, there's two things that they're very evident. One is that this project has to move forward. We don't have a choice in the matter. And the other thing that is also evident is the assessments are too high. So we're going to have to move forward on this today, I believe. And in the meantime, from the time that we pass this today to the time where the assessments are actually given out, we're going to have to work out something to decrease the amount of assessments that are going to be charged to these people. Not sure exactly what that is, but we're going to have to do something. So if there's no other comments, I'd like to make a motion to approve. Yes, Neil?
I just have one comment. It might affect your motion, and I think I heard Commissioner Blair mention this when we were trying to throw numbers around. If we look at this in terms of taking the road pavement out, and at the smallest end was $80,546. As you've heard from Wayne, that can vary based on contingencies. And if we could get the county with the $266,897, that could effectively reduce this project cost by 38%. If we could reduce that by 38% for the homeowners with a 40 by 127-foot lot, that would bring it down close to a $6,000 assessment, which is getting a little bit more reasonable. So, the township will work with the county engineer, Mr. Carney, on the roads and trying to do that as our next road project. And I would just strongly encourage the commissioners that with our good faith on the road, if you'll consider that roughly $267,000, I think this project is doable. And I would strongly encourage our residents to perhaps consider not going forward with litigation and let this project go forward. So
I spoke to you yesterday on the phone, Neil, and you never really gave me an answer, but does the township have any funds available to put towards this project? Because I told you also, whatever you guys do, I feel that the county should match that.
What we would be doing, Commissioner Kokoski, is getting the estimates for the roads, and that's the portion that the township would do is the roads.
But that would be covered, that would be paid for by Ohio Public Works, not by the township.
Well, a portion of that's not guaranteed. Typically, the township is contributing somewhere in the neighborhood no less than 20% and as high as 40%. I know Mr. Carney was going to get the history on the township's contribution and realize the higher percentage we contribute, the more possibility we have of obtaining those funds. But I would strongly encourage the county, when I'm asking, using that number of $267,000, I'm not saying that has to come out of the general fund. If the county can leverage some grant funds, most certainly I would encourage that also. So in this situation, we're looking at the $80,000 for the roads that the township would do that as one of their projects. I'm just hoping that the commissioners would consider that $267,000 contribution to this project to try and make this reasonable. Again, I can't say for certain what the residents would do, but I think in light of what their current assessments are, having this reduced by 38% is a sizable reduction for all the effort and work that's gone into this project up until this point. And who knows what the EPA is going to do from this point forward. But this way, as Commissioner Blair indicated, instead of paying fines to the EPA, let's put those monies and those funds to this project. So I just hope you consider that in your motion. $267,000.
I don't think so, Neil, but
Nice try, Neil. I can't.
nice try, Neil.
Well, at least you were specific, Neil.
Commissioner?
Negotiations can continue after we vote on this today, correct? On how we want to put some funding towards this, where the funding's coming from, if we can get grant money. I just emailed RPAC. I'm not even sure. I called Voinovich's office yesterday to get some information on any kind of grant funding out there, and she gave me a website to go to, and I emailed them this morning to see if there's any grant money available. So there's still time between now and when the project starts to get additional funding.
There is, and the project will be going well into 2007, so it's not going to be completed this year either. The only thing I would suggest, if I may, I started to hear part of what you were going to say. I think as a motion, I would caution that we don't want to promise a reduced cost, that you can promise to work towards that, but I don't know that we want to see it in the motion that we're going to reduce those costs. That could give us some problems later on.
I was just going to make a motion to approve. I didn't have any
sorry.
anything to go with that, just a motion to approve, and with the anticipation that we are going to try to reduce the cost for the residents. Because I'm sitting here today because of an assessment on my street in Lorain, so I feel very strongly for you people. I don't know if I brought that up at the last meeting, but...
You did.
Well, I think it might have been the Dutton Road, Rolling Heights. I don't know if I
That's all right.
talked to
You
these
can say
guys.
it. You can say it again.
But, so I do feel very strongly about being assessed and the amount of the assessment, and your assessment is as much as my assessment was, and I had 100-foot of frontage, so the costs have definitely gone up, and if we keep postponing this, I think the costs are going to continue to go up. Not only the cost, but also the interest rate. So we need to proceed on this, but I definitely want to do whatever we can to reduce the amount of your assessment. So I would make that motion to proceed.
I'll make the second, but some discussion before we can go any farther.
Sure.
I honestly, I've been in business my entire adult life. I hate approving something and then going into negotiations afterwards because no one seems happy at the end of them either way. We can work out something that we are locked into a percentage, or if we set something forward that this board's going to commence doing or helping. I said it's my first one through. I have a real hard time putting general fund dollars there. They're leaving their future based on what we decide to do after we've approved this. So, I mean, is there anything from the board? I mean, we can't give $300,000. Let's be honest, guys. There's no way $300,000 of our general fund to.
I don't think
help
we
with
have to
the
make
sewer.
that decision today, do we, on how much or what we're going to reduce it by?
You don't, Commissioner, but one of the things I was trying not to do is leave an expectation that you would revisit that decision over and over again. I think you really need to say yay or nay, and then we can continue to look for grant money and other ways of mitigating the cost. But I think I hear Commissioner Kalo suggesting that the issue of whether there's going to be a county contribution should be part of what we do today.
Yeah, I don't want to leave the residents out there hanging that you're expecting a third of this to be dropped, and I don't think I can support that.
I'm not saying a third. I didn't say a
understand
third.
that, but they don't know what they're going to get. I would think that the residents or the trustees would like to have some type of thing. I mean, I'm looking at the project, and I'll take this from my side, and you guys can bash me all you want, or the trustees. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem starting some type of a mandate when we have these type of issues in EPA findings. If we're looking in somewhere of a $100,000 EPA find, and that's what I think has been talked about and thrown about and banter. Go ahead, Jim. You
Well,
comment on this, because I'm going forward.
We're negotiating with the EPA on issues right now, and that's, we're entering what they call the matrix.
Right.
We've been working, actually, the original numbers we were talking about were over $1 million.
Right.
So,
But we've got
On
no
several
time.
projects.
Right,
on
several projects, right.
and we've been able to aggressively bring those down. But I will tell you, there's also costs that are assumed, that come out of those, and those costs are recoverable to each project also, because there's the cost of having our attorneys go in, having our experts go in and work with the EPA, and all those costs get attributed to the specific project that we're there talking about. So the register is always ringing, even while we're trying to do that.
I'm just looking back at my assessment process, and it was a city, and it was a little different because we had an equalization board, and we're basically the equalization board. Well,
Lucky us.
our assessment was a certain dollar amount, and we fought it like you guys are, appealed it and everything, and then when we got our assessment letters, we didn't know what it was going to be until we got the letters. So we fought it without knowing what the outcome was going to be, and luckily it was lower. So, and I'm hoping that we can do the same thing for these people. But I'm not saying, the same dollar amount that Mr. Lynch is asking for, and who knows if some grant money might become available.
Well, that's what I was leading to. I mean, if we can do just like a flat number, I mean, I would support amending your passing this to like $100,000, a 10% basically flat amount based on whatever the assessments come in at, to help reduce the cost, and then we can look for the other grant money or whatever, and this great idea about 7 years down the road passing the debt on.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, me neither. So, I mean, I would support something like that, giving them a 10% flat. That's, I mean, major participation on the county's end of it. If we're doing another almost would you come up with $113,000 between laterals and the roadway, Neil?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's knocking 23%, 22% off of the bill. I mean, I just can't go and take general fund and knock a third of the cost of this project down. We'll have a lot more sewer projects coming before us, package plants we have to upgrade where the residents are being assessed for that and charged higher rates.
Yeah, Commissioner,
Go ahead.
with the potential litigation hanging over our head, I don't think you should give any kind of agreement to any kind of participation right now until that's resolved.
I thought you were asking us
The appeal?
before. That's why I brought it up.
The appeal litigation?
I'm agreeing with you that,
Well, could we, in the motion, Jerry, I'm sorry, I'm preempting, but I'm piggybacking on your thought, make a motion to approve the construction and a caveat of a dollar amount if, in fact, an appeal is not forthcoming.
Contingent upon no appeal, you mean?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
well, Mr. Ennis thinks about that, I also got to, and I'm required to do this, to tell you that we have 12 other projects we're working on.
That's what I was saying.
Okay? We've got 12 other projects, so and I always have to be the bad guy, but if you do this here,
Setting precedent.
be prepared in those 12 other projects to be doing similar. So if it's 10,000 today, or 100, or 200, do the multiplication yourself. You don't need Neil's calculator.
It also should be 10% or not to exceed a dollar amount.
Well, yeah, I would understand.
Okay.
However you guys want to do this. I've not done one of these before. My commissioners have both participated in assessments, so I was just trying to give a number that we had some finality to it, then they can decide if they want to pursue litigation or not, or start the project forward, knowing that if the EPA finds it's going to go right on top of your assessments. We get them down to $100,000, that still goes on your assessments. So I'm trying to placate them that we're going to start the project and give you guys $100,000 instead of giving it to the EPA. So.
No, I don't think we can start passing assessments with, muddying it with contingencies.
Okay.
Why
You want to
not?
pass a separate
No horse trading.
resolution indicating that it is your intent to
Maybe
do
that would be
that,
better.
and then with whatever anybody wants to appeal, we can
Amend it
wrap
if we need
that
to.
in there.
We reserve the right, right?
But
to
Right.
not...
You help us craft a motion.
Well, I think,
We'll just pass this as is and then have another
I think you're right.
resolution stating our intent is to contribute $100,000 or 10% to the
probably, it's
project.
probably not going to fend off an appeal, but at least it, we're already making, if you will, a proposed settlement to that appeal.
Can I take one second? Sir, can you let Mr. Phillips up here? He's the litigator. He gave a high sign he wanted to speak.
Yeah, maybe I can provide some assistance. If you want to do it by two motions, one to proceed with it, and then a second motion. We did this with the Amherst Airport. We did it with East River Road. I mean, you pass a resolution indicating that you would pay up to 50% of the final assessed cost. So you can do it by a percentage. And Mr. Kalo, I believe your suggestion is a very good one. What dollar amount you ultimately end up with, I'm sure the residents would appreciate it. We don't want to have to go to court. We don't want to delay the project. As far as addressing Mr. Cortez's issue about precedent, I think this is a unique situation, just like we visited... we revisited when we were dealing with the Amherst situation with the airport and that. I mean, there were some fact situations. Here we have an agreement where the agreement clearly indicates there's a benefit from that outfall between two municipalities, okay? And Hall Court, is going to get some benefit through the city, okay? Therefore, you can clearly justify the fact that there are benefits going outside that are being burdened on these people, okay? Which in your usual situation you're not going to find. And we heard the fact that $297,000 was the cost of the outfall on the low side. So if you divide that by two and say half to the county and half to the city, that's $140-some thousand. That's about 15% of the project cost of $900,000.
Back to horse trading, huh, Jerry?
Well, I mean, if you say 15% or that the assessment will be 85%, I can tell you that I can't guarantee it, but I'll tell my clients to waive any all rights of appeal if we got 85% assessment, with the caveat that the county would work with the trustees with the roadway issue if we can do something with the storm sewers and the laterals, whatever happens. I mean, there's no guarantees that those could work out, but nothing has indicated today that the commissioners and the county officials aren't trying to work on those three issues. I mean, I think, and I have to commend Neil Lynch for his efforts. I mean, he's really gone to bat for these residents, and litigation process is going to drag it on, and they don't want to experience the exposed fines and costs. But I guess that's my counter proposal, in the sense of, make it 15%. That's 190. Let's see, 91 plus 45, about 135. Yeah, that's 15%. So, and I think that's approximate half of the cost. It's a little less than half of the cost of the outfall, which these people are being forced to pay, that are benefiting people in Amherst. So I would suggest you can do it by two motions. I think we did it by one when they did the other one, but I would seriously and totally tell my clients that if they got the 15% assessment reduction and that they were going to be assessed at 85%, that we would not appeal.
Commissioners, I would have a lot less heartburn if you took the outfall issue and mitigated the outfall issue if you felt there was a need to do that, so that we weren't just providing unilateral dollars to a sewer project.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, what I mean is, as a rationale, if you believe that there's an outfall issue,
Then deal with that separately.
and you're going to provide additional dollars in a separate resolution, and then addressing it as mitigating the cost of the outfall, I think that would be a little bit unique, I think was the word I heard. This is the third time it's been, we've had a unique situation in the last 2 years, but because I did hear that you were talking about a 10% participation level.
Just a flat fee done.
I like the percentage basis rather than a dollar amount, because that gives us the opportunity, if we do get more funding, that's the less we have to pay. So we'll work a little harder to save the county and the residents money. So I do like the percentage rather than a flat dollar amount.
We're working on a commission then, Commissioner.
Basically, yeah.
Percentage of the overall cost.
Right,
Right.
percentage of the cost. And I, too, would like to commend Neil for representing the people in his area. I think I told him yesterday when I was going through my assessment process, my representative told me, just don't go out to eat once a week, you can afford it. So he's standing up for you very well, and I think the commissioners here, too, feel very strongly that we'd like to help you, too. So,
Neil, I was just glad you didn't bring up the alphabet again today.
Sir, did
The
you...
alphabet.
Yes, ma'am, I do. My name is Greg Hoops. I own the property owner on Taylor Street, and I'm acting spokesperson for this group. I'd like to thank the commissioners for taking time to hear us. I'd like to thank my township trustees for coming out and lending their support to our project. They've been instrumental in helping us. And I'd also like to thank all the other members here who have been left with the end-of-day project of crunching all the beans on this and making sure that everything goes through. It's a lot of work. I'm here to bring face to the people in this project. This is a neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that's been there for years. These are the faces of these people that are in this neighborhood. Most of them have been there for a lot of years. Some of them are newcomers. We're not a neighborhood that you hear much about in the news. We're a neighborhood that basically keeps quiet, takes care of our own, helps each other, and believes in the process of law. And a lot of people couldn't be here today because they're elderly. They got problems, they couldn't come, their mates couldn't be here, and so forth. One of the things I've heard mentioned, and it keeps coming to mind, is 91 properties. There's 91 properties down there, but there's 53 property owners. So this is the 53 people that are actually going to be hit with these. And the properties themselves, if I could ask you to look at this room is approximately 40 feet wide. And I'm not sure the depth, but our properties are only 127 foot deep. So you're looking at properties that are about as big as this room. And the houses on most of them are about the size of this group of chairs here.
Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Thursday mornings at 9:30 at the Lorain County Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings, and as always, you are
A little bit unique, I think was the word I heard. This is the third time it's been, we've had a unique situation in the last 2 years, but because I did hear that you were talking about a 10% participation level.
Just a flat fee done.
I like the percentage basis rather than a dollar amount, because that gives us the opportunity, if we do get more funding, that's the less we have to pay. So we'll work a little harder to save the county and the residents money. So I do like the percentage rather than a flat dollar amount.
We're working on a commission then, Commissioner.
Basically, yeah.
Percentage of the overall cost.
Right,
Right.
percentage of the cost. And I, too, would like to commend Neil for representing the people in his area. I think I told him yesterday when I was going through my assessment process, my representative told me, just don't go out to eat once a week, you can afford it. So he's standing up for you very well, and I think the commissioners here, too, feel very strongly that we'd like to help you, too. So,
Neil, I was just glad you didn't bring up the alphabet again today.
Sir, did
The
you...
alphabet.
Yes, ma'am, I do. My name is Greg Hoops. I own the property owner on Taylor Street, and I'm acting spokesperson for this group. I'd like to thank the commissioners for taking time to hear us. I'd like to thank my township trustees for coming out and lending their support to our project. They've been instrumental in helping us. And I'd also like to thank all the other members here who have been left with the end-of-day project of crunching all the beans on this and making sure that everything goes through. It's a lot of work. I'm here to bring face to the people in this project. This is a neighborhood. This is a neighborhood that's been there for years. These are the faces of these people that are in this neighborhood. Most of them have been there for a lot of years. Some of them are newcomers. We're not a neighborhood that you hear much about in the news. We're a neighborhood that basically keeps quiet, takes care of our own, helps each other, and believes in the process of law. And a lot of people couldn't be here today because they're elderly. They got problems, they couldn't come, their mates couldn't be here, and so forth. One of the things I've heard mentioned, and it keeps coming to mind, is 91 properties. There's 91 properties down there, but there's 53 property owners. So this is the 53 people that are actually going to be hit with these. And the properties themselves, if I could ask you to look at this room is approximately 40 feet wide. And I'm not sure the depth, but our properties are only 127 foot deep. So you're looking at properties that are about as big as this room. And the houses on most of them are about the size of this group of chairs here. And these people have raised their families in these houses on 40-foot lots for 60, 70 years and have raised good group of people, and not many of us have fallen far from the tree. Another thing that I'd like to bring up is the City of Amherst profit making. We're being hit with a cost in addition to what their regular residents pay, and it seems to be profit making on the part of Amherst City. I ask the commissioners do look at this thing. I invite the commissioners to come out and look at the neighborhood involved. It's not 12-foot bedrooms. It's not entryways. It's not glamour kitchens or anything like that. It's strictly a group of people trying to survive, trying to raise their kids, and trying to provide a better tomorrow for them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hoops.
Well, can I make the first motion then to...
I think you have one on the
Oh,
floor.
I have one, okay. Do I have a second?
I already seconded
There
it.
is a second.
Okay.
You should just proceed. Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Now do we need to make another motion?
Yes.
I make a motion that we, as the Board of Commissioners, contribute 10% to the project.
As
And-
mitigation for the problems with the outfall.
Okay. What he said.
I'll second that.
Now, Commissioner, do you want to make that one contingent upon a satisfactory resolution of the appeal?
Yes, I thought this was working for. Jerry, we can't give you 15, we'll give you 10. Can you recommend to your clients to settle so we can start this project and not end up with EPA fines and it costs them more? I don't mind horse trading.
Well, that's something, I mean, I don't think he can give us that answer today, so
He
just
can
let's
tell us
just,
if he can recommend it or not.
you can
I will talk to
recommend
him,
it.
and I will recommend it. If you're going to make it with that issue, I also like, language that the county will, in good faith, work with the trustees in the resolution of the roadway payments, the laterals, and the storm sewer issues. And what we've done on other projects is work with the engineers, both the county and the outside, to do value engineering things to help reduce the costs, which we did on other projects where we reduced assessments with Parma, where we come up with alternatives and lower the cost, because ultimately it saves the county money and then also to the extent of the contribution. So if that was added, I would recommend that to them. I can't tell you what they'll decide, but I can recommend it.
I believe that, I'm not sure we can put all of that into a resolution, but I do believe that we've
already
agreed
decided
to
to do
all of
that.
those
Yeah.
things, and, there has to be some good faith here that we'll continue to do those things. I believe a lot of those things have been done. I believe there's been a lot of dialogue with the trustees, both
And the
with
engineer's office.
the engineer's office and the commissioner's office, and I think that we're going to continue to do that. But the value engineering is a new piece, and I think we do try to value engineer, and I'm glad you brought that up. Ken, you value engineer all your projects for best practices and so forth, correct? I see an affirmation going.
Yeah, from Mr. Carney, our sanitary engineer.
I mean, you can leave out those additional items, and then after I discuss it with my client, we can always enter into an agreement.
Memo of understanding, so to speak?
Yeah, well, a memorandum of understanding or a settlement agreement saying we will not pursue the appeal, and we can put in that separate document, these good faith obligations. I think that may be a better way to deal with it.
Yeah, council's acknowledging that would be
Yeah,
acceptable.
Jerry, but how do we word this? Do we just make an amendment to the resolution we passed, or we do another resolution?
I think you leave the resolution as passed contingent upon resolution of the appeal, and I don't recall offhand. What's your appeal time, Jim?
10 days.
Okay, it's pretty short, but I think we could probably put together some document that evidences the understanding within that period of time.
Okay.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Phillips?
So the motion would be the county would
Contribute
pay
10%.
90% of the assessment amount, reducing it 10% because of the issues with the outfall, contingent upon the residents not going forward with their appeal.
Right, and we'll send you a memorandum of understanding. Is that what we've agreed to do?
And then we would enter into a memorandum of understanding, putting the good faith effort in, and at that time I can have authorization from the residents to sign that, or either that or I'll get them all to sign it. Okay? I mean, we are dealing with the group, and it does create a
Right.
mechanical problem.
We would be meeting within the 10 days again, Commissioner, so if for some reason we need to tweak that a little bit to satisfaction.
Yeah, what's the next step in the process? Are we going to meet again on the same issue?
No.
Not
No.
necessarily, no. It
Oh.
just
Only
goes
if we
forward.
have to do something
I'm
differently
just saying, if in
to tweak
case-
the agreement.
Oh, okay.
Can I have a moment, please?
I don't think any of the residents think that we're trying to charge you more money or we want you to be charged. We wish we didn't have to deal with these situations. So if we can work something out, get this project forward, we don't get fined, you don't get the cost of those fines in your assessments.
Commissioners, I think we jointly like to make a recommendation that councils meet on the MOU and that you hold off passing any percentage participation until that's agreed. You have 10 days from their appeal. You can do this next Thursday.
You passed the other
You passed the first one.
That's the
I'm talking
first
about
one.
the
The second one,
The second one?
10%?
Well, I don't want to end up in a negotiating position where we're horse trading and this all melts down next week. If we
Okay.
can get the 10% approved,
it.
Okay.
based on you
Yeah.
guys going to negotiations, all in good faith, let's get that done.
Okay. My motion stands. I call for second.
The one individual approached me and says that the $100,000 amount would probably be preferable rather than the percentage.
I'd rather do a percentage.
Okay,
And I
that's
think you
fine.
walk away just because it gives
I
us some
understand.
precedent for the rest of the county, Jerry, and I'm sure you'll be here some more to visit us.
Well, only if I get called.
Okay,
And
all
like
right. I think you're the preeminent guy on this, so you're going to get the phone calls.
Mrs. Kukowski?
Aye.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye. Public comment?
I think
That's
that,
where we're at now.
We're a public comment now,
Go to the
Commissioner.
bathroom. Can we take a
Why don't you
5
give a couple minutes for the
Can
room
we-
to clear?
maybe some
I
on
think
the
they want to sit.
Yeah, but can we take like a 5-minute, 2-minute?
You're the boss, you can take anything you want.
Take 2 minutes before public comment. Okay, we're going to now open the meeting up to public comment. If you come up to the microphone, please state your name and address. Anybody wishing to speak? No one?
Shirley, you letting us off free today?
David, our usuals? Oh.
Well, if you can't say it here, you shouldn't say it anyplace.
And my mom always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Oh, amen. I love it.
This mom and grandmother doesn't feel that way.
Uh-oh. Well, That's too bad.
Well, if we don't have any public comment, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn
To
into
executive
executive session as outlined by our administrator.
I'll second that motion.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Your recess.